There are a few experiences in my life that I feel have defined who I am today. Um, One of them was when I was in first grade, when my parents got divorced. This led to a childhood that I had of kind of figuring out things and having to make choices on my own. And I think with a lot of a lack of parental guidance, I think this kind of led to me making a lot of choices for myself, a lot of mistakes for myself. I chose friends that um, weren't necessarily the best influence in my life, which I think led to a lot, making a lot more poor choices. I would also say that during this period of time, school detention was part of my my second nature. Um, Part of always being in trouble, always um, being in detention. Even though I spent a lot of in trouble in my youth, I had a lot of friends, and I was easily liked by my peers and other people. And I was very confident with who I was, even though I was making poor choices. Um, the people that I was around with, my friends, they were always accepting of the choices that I made, even though they were necessarily weren't the best choices. Um, they accepted me despite the choices that I made. I think a big part of people accepting me, my friends that accepted me for those choices, I think this led to part of who I am today and what defines me is that it led me to becoming a very carefree person. I also feel like I'm a very non-judgmental person. I'm understanding of people's shortcomings and differences because I've recognized that I have my own um, shortcomings. I've made my own mistakes and I've recognized that. And so I don't feel like I'm a very judgmental person, or I'm able to understand a lot of where people come from. The second experience kind of started when in fifth grade, and it was when I started playing basketball. And I wanted to read a quote, or not a quote, a poem. I wanted to read a poem about basketball because I feel like this poem pulls out a lot of characteristics or qualities that I feel like I've had to learn over the years, especially through the sport. And because of my past of a divorced family, I've had to learn how to, um, as the poem suggests, a lot of perseverance and try to pick yourself back up and to continually trying. And so I want to read this poem to explain a part of who I am and what defines me today. It's called "Just a Ball Game" by Amber Fuller. It says, "God cares not for basketball," a lad was heard to say, "for there is no court in heaven where teams will get to play. And rightly so, for then you see the battle will be finished. One team will be victorious, ne'er again to be diminished. Yes, in that day no men will fight, in rest they'll warm the benches. But today all guards and posts and wings are struggling in the trenches. The trench is life, and each must play to vie for victor's cup. The battle cries for warriors who simply won't give up. Players who will persevere when luck is wearing thin. They'll dig down deep and deeper to find the will to win. For while it's just a ball game, here's the irony. What conquers on the hardwood conquers all adversity. The game is oft symbolic. Like life, it's seldom fair. But traits that build great character are honed and fostered there. God cares not for basketball. It's just a game. But then, God is a fan of basketball when it molds his boys to men. I like this poem because it shows a lot of the characteristics that I feel like I have within myself. It talks about perseverance and how you always have to dig down deeper and deeper to find a will to win. With a lot of the poor choices that I've made in my past, I've kind of got to pick myself up and move on with my life and figure out how to correct those wrongs. Um, I am an imperfect person, struggling in the trenches of life and needing to make changes that will impact my future. And I like that this poem, kind of like this poem suggests that that it will mold his boys to men. Life will mold us, or the game of basketball will mold us. And I feel like at this point in my life that's who I am, and trying to mold myself and trying to make choices to become eventually the man that God has intended me to be.